What's up guys, my name is Julian here in San Diego, and today I'm making a video that's pulling the curtain back on this whole panel discussion about what panel is best, because I hear a lot of people asking me questions which indicate that they are confused and actually don't really grasp the basic concepts. And so I'm here to help you out understand what all the wattages mean. Is higher wattage really better? Is that really the indicator that you need to be looking at? And maybe what you should really be looking at in order to really kind of have a better idea of which panel will perform better, and of course which panel is better for you on your home. All right, so let's dive right into the panel comparison. Now, most of the time when you're looking at panels, you're looking at the watt rating and you're saying, all right, this panel's 300 watts, this one's 350, this one's 370, and that's a kind of a naive way to look at this situation, because at the end of the day, the panels have two different watt ratings. The one that we see and the one that's advertised is right here. It's called the STC, or Standard Test Condition Rating. And what that is they put the panel inside the factory. They drop the temperature to a really low temperature because that's the ideal scenario for a panel. Heat degrades the panel's performance, and so what they do, like I said, they bring it into this really cold room, and then they have these huge artificial bulbs which they just put right in front of the panel. And when it's on your roof in the real world, it's never in these standard test condition rated kind of environments. We have a more real-world environment, of course. So there is another rating that I don't hear anybody asking me about, and I know if other solar consultants were talking about it, then I would be getting asked this by other people when they're kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of their questions. And so there's another rating called the NOMT, or Normal Operating Module Temperature Rating. And what this is now putting the panel in a more real-world environment. It's going to be real-world temperature, so it's about 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. There's not an unlimited amount of UV rays hitting the panel. It's limited to 800 watts per square meter. And so it gives this a more realistic rating for North America. And so if you really go into the spec sheets and look, you'll find this, and really this is the watt rating that I think is more important. So just going through some of these panels that you already see, I'm sure you've already been kind of looking at these and comparing, but the numbers in blue, that's really the real world kind of max performance. Now in San Diego here, it is going to be a little bit better than this actually, because we have, we're very southern and the solar systems produce really well here. But generally speaking, this is a better number to really compare. So that's the first point of this video, is that there's the STC and the NOMT ratings, and the NOMT rating is really, in my opinion, more important to look at. Okay, so here's the other thing that most solar consultants don't really talk about. Most people ask me, how big are these panels? And the average 60 cell panel, the kind of basic answer that most solar consultants are going to say is it's about 3 feet by 5 feet. And that's kind of true, but really all of these panels are different sizes. And a trend that I've been seeing lately is that these manufacturers are just making panels bigger, and therefore there's more square footage, right? And so they're higher wattage panels. It doesn't mean that on a per square inch basis or per square foot basis, you're actually getting more power out of it. That efficiency rating is going up a lot more slowly versus these like 400 and 500 watt panels that are coming out. It's kind of deceiving. So with that being said, these are kind of the top performing panels for 2021. There are others, but these are kind of like the best ones in my opinion. I could be missing another one. Some solar consultant I'm sure is going to say, what about this one or whatever. But these are some popular choices. So I wrote all the dimensions down over here, and I hope you can see it. The video, it may not be clear enough, but basically the Panasonic HIT panel is about 2,597 square inches. And this is the smallest panel of the bunch. So when you see that it's a 325 or 340 watt panel, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not as powerful, because really if you break it down to how much power is coming out of every per square inch, like I did over here, the Panasonic is actually outperforming all of the other panels, even though it has a lower watt rating. Why? Because it's smaller. So it's as simple as that. You have to compare power per square inch. That's really a much better point of view to really be comparing these panels. So I'm just going to now talk a little bit about kind of some of these panels in a little bit more depth, just some different scenarios where I think these panels would work really well. All right, so with the LG Neon 2, this is one of the most popular panels in the whole United States. And this is basically LG's, there's two panels LG makes, and this is kind of their entry-level panel. It's the standard one that 98% of people basically are going to go with. It has a really good price point. The thing that LG does is they do a triple 25-year warranty, so they include labor, actually up to $450 per module, which is really great. So LG is not going anywhere. This is a great performer. It's not necessarily like the most powerful panel in the world, but at the end of the day, if you have room for 30 panels and you only need 20, then it doesn't really matter, or it's not a huge advantage to spend more money on 18 super high efficiency panels to get the same amount of power as you would get out of 20 LGs. So it's a great choice. Now, it's one of the top performers, not quite as efficient as the Panasonic, but it's a great choice and very popular. Now, the Panasonic HIT, I'm kind of sad that this panel is actually kind of on its way out, because this one has a little bit of a different technology that they use. I'm not going to get into depth, but it's basically 96 smaller cells instead of 60 bigger cells. And they even made a special microinverter for it that has a higher AC output because it's so efficient, and it would be clipping on the IQ7, which is where the panel outperforms the microinverter and bottlenecks it. So this Panasonic HIT, we're actually Panasonic preferred installers, and I love selling this panel. If right now in 2021, if I had if I was going solar and putting it on my house, I'd probably be going with this Panasonic. So, they also have the 25-year labor warranty, which is really great. So the Qcell right here, this is another really popular panel, and this 380 is actually the newer model. And as you can see, the NOMT is really not greater than the Panasonic or the LG, even though that STC rating is higher. So, in the real world, this panel is a little bigger as well. You can see it's almost 3,000 square inches versus the 2,500 or 2,600. And so while you're going to get pretty much the same amount of power out of the module is bigger. So really it's not as efficient. Now, Qcells also doesn't include any labor in their warranty like the first two. I call it the double 25 versus the triple 25. It's just a product and performance warranty, not a product, performance, and labor. But overall, Qcells is a great pick. It's just it's a good product. It's not necessarily the best though. Now, the Solaria panel is. It's funny because Solaria is really good at branding. They say, oh, we have all these patents and we have a super high efficiency panel. And, I'm not trying to talk badly about the Solaria panel because it's still a really great panel. But when you really start diving into some of the specs, you realize that it's not all that amazing, really, comparatively speaking. Yes, it's the best looking, sleekest all black panel on the market. You can't really even see any little wiring or any wirings or cell lines or anything. It's going to be your best looking panel, but that's really the advantage to it if you're really aesthetically minded. It does offer the 25-year labor warranty, which is really great, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty big panel to get that 400 watts. And when you look at the NOMT, it's still less than 300. So, I don't know. I see a lot of people buying these panels thinking that they're getting the Mercedes-Benz of panels, and at the end of the day, I kind of think it's a pretty average panel wrapped in some fancy, whatever, so it's not bad, but it's not some incredible panel. Okay, so the LG Neon R, this is LG's premium panel. It has the best degradation rating out of all the bunch here, and it's really, really expensive. Like anyone in the solar industry that knows about how much these panels cost, we always think of in terms of price per watt, and this is one of the only panels that costs everyone over $1 per watt. So if it's a 395 watt panel, this panel is like costing contractors like probably close to $500, you know, versus another panel that's you know, maybe like $150 less or something. So yeah, I struggled to sell this panel, like, because I don't really, there's very few instances when you really have to have this panel. I have used this in a couple of scenarios. Last year I used this panel on a small commercial flat roof, and you know, we didn't necessarily have room to put another row of Panasonics because they weren't small enough to get another row in, but you know, if you still compare module just to module, you're still going to get more out of the LG. So we only had room for like 14 panels, I think, and they needed like 30. So we just went with the panel that was going to produce the most amount of power. So it has its place, but for the average home, pretty unnecessary. And unless you're pairing it with the IQ7A microinverter, I mean, you're really not going to get that much more out of it. So really expensive, premium. Definitely not for everyone. Just because it's more efficient doesn't always necessarily mean it's better. So, all right, SunPower. Let's talk about SunPower for a second, because I know a lot of people are going to probably comment and say, Julian, you shouldn't be getting into this. But side note about SunPower. So they use the N-phase microinverters in their AC modules, but the software, the monitoring software that comes with your SunPower system is a super dumbed down version compared to the normal Enlighten N-phase monitoring that you get with normal microinverters. And they do not give you per panel monitoring. What SunPower does is they say, we're just promising a certain amount of AC output, which sounds really great as an elevator pitch, except for when you really get into it, you realize that that number, that production guaranteed number, is such a diluted amount that your system probably is never going to hit that anyways. And they've even made it to the point where you can have possibly one microinverter fail and still be above that threshold. And because you can't see it, and you know, contractually, as long as your system is performing better than what that set number is on the contract, then your system is working fine, you know, legally. So, you know, as the owner, as someone who is investing in, you know, multiple $1,000 energy system, I would want to see the individual panels monitoring. So that's a little side note about SunPower. Another thing too is that, as you can see here, they don't disclose what the NOMT is. Like, why would you not do that? If you had the most efficient, powerful panel on the market, you think that you'd be bragging about it, but for some reason, right, they don't want to tell you. So I can't technically give you a watt per square inch rating. So it's also a pretty big panel, not necessarily the biggest, but it's 66 cell. It's like another, basically they added another like 6 or 7 inches onto the top. All right, so now let's talk about the Panasonic EverVolt. Now Panasonic, like I mentioned up here, I was sad that the Panasonic HIT was going away, but the Panasonic EverVolt's kind of Panasonic's new solar brand, and they're, like I said, sadly discontinuing the HIT. They're replacing it with the EverVolt. Now the EverVolt panel is going to be a 360 and 370 module, and they're going away from this smaller 96 cell format like the HIT uses, and they're going to be using 120 cell, but they're split cells. Now a couple other companies already use this, like QCells and REC, and it's a more efficient platform than just using 60 whole cells, because basically they're making like more lanes in the freeway so the electrons don't get into as many traffic jams essentially. But we don't know what that official NOMT rating is. Also, Panasonic likes to use the CEC rating, which is similar, but not exactly the same. I actually had to a little bit, not guess, but I had to estimate on what the true NOMT rating for the Panasonic was, because they use the CEC, which it's, like I said, similar, but there's more light hitting it, and that's actually over 300 for the Panasonic. But we're still waiting on what that is for the EverVolt. I've heard though that the CEC rating is going to be up to 342, so that's a really good ratio. Okay, so I hope you learned something. Feel free to message me and I can get into more depth about any one of these panels or whatever you want. But I hope that you learned something in terms of maybe how to look at the panels better and compare them, not just about wattage, like I said, go into the spec sheet and really look at the dimensions and really do a little bit more studying. So hopefully I've guided you in the right direction. And of course, if you're in San Diego and other places too, but mostly San Diego because that's where I am, give me a call. I can give you a solar quote that you're going to get not just good panels and honest info, but everything else is going to be really great too. The racking and standoffs and workmanship and etc. So, all right.